Welcome everyone. Welcome to What's the Deal with AI? That's a sound. That sounds like folks here have heard the term AI before. It's kind of hard to avoid nowadays. So this is the second. Oh, I should say who I am. I'm Zander Miller. I'm the digital strategy librarian at Kenosha Public Library. This program actually has taken like hours of research to do. If you are curious at all, I have a works cited that is basically everything that I have looked at for this presentation. That is situated over there. I have 10 of them. I can print more. I always love it when people take my works cited because you're not just like trusting me, which please, this is weird to say, but like, don't just trust information sources. Go to the source they get it from, because I'm going to say a lot of different things. I'm not necessarily going to be like, it's from this article by this person. I have that all on that works cited. So please take it. There are, the URLs are on there, as well as, you know, the author, the site that it was on, etc. So it is, if you have written a paper anytime recently, it's MLA formatted. Funnily enough, part of that citation helper does use some AI to create the citation. So that is a slightly meta. But okay, let's get on with the meat of the presentation. So even before then, the first part is actually, there's a little slight understanding that we're gonna have to talk about that is gonna be underpinning everything that we discuss. So it's that the base computer technology, the literal power of computers, has been improving over time. And so one of the developer presentations that I'd researched for this had actually called some periods of time from the 50s to like now. There are some periods called AI winters where there was absolutely zero development in the field of AI. That is because computers were not strong enough for the concept of AI to function well. Like, the idea was there, computers just weren't at that level. These more powerful systems and the tools we use to store information have gotten stronger. Hence, now we're like, oh my gosh, there's a bunch of stuff going on with this thing called AI. But what allows everything with AI to function nowadays is how powerful computers have gotten and how much data they can store. Keep that in mind. I'm not really going to talk too much about that development. Funnily enough, not a software engineer. So when it comes to how that data is crunched and how storage of data happens, I can't really talk knowledgeably about that part. But we have to recognize that storing data and the ability to store a lot of data is a big part of it, and computers needed to be better to do it and reach the point where we're at with AI now. Okay, so the first question and thought about AI is, it's short for artificial intelligence, is to think about what is intelligence. Because AI has always been about mimicking human intelligence and intuition. A good quote from one of the books I read for this, A Brief History of Artificial Intelligence, notes that it regards like driving, the quote is, AI has always been about mimicking human intelligence, intuity. That's the quote from the book. But it uses this example. So if we think of a Tesla Model S and its autopilot feature, it still needs a driver to be paying attention to driving conditions. There's no such thing as a true autopilot. The remainder of the quote there is, this mismatch between driver expectations and the reality of what that system can do seems to be driven, at least in part, by an overexcited press, who don't seem to be very good at understanding or communicating the subtleties of technology capability. So there's still some gaps out there between the capabilities of AI and the reality of what it can and can't do. 100% driving is part of those issues. So what is intelligence? Intelligence has to do with perception. scanning and its environment and analyzing that environment. We do this all the time with our senses. Language, the ability to have a conversation, to have a shared understanding of a thing. Learning, so learning from the mistake, fixing that, and also generalizing situations. So when we were talking intelligence, we're thinking, if I'm presenting in this room with this technology, if I go to another room, I can generalize that it's going to be the same thing in that other room, but we're just in a different space. So being able to generalize that stuff. And also reasoning, being deductive or inductive reason. So if this happens, then this is the consequence. And you don't necessarily need to put your hand on the burner to know that that will burn my hand. So reasoning, but also problem solving. So searching through potential actions beforehand, trying to find a solution. So if I was bored before a presentation, playing music keeps me a little less bored. So problem, solution, and figuring that out. All of these factors lead to the idea of what makes something intelligence. And what AI is doing is it's mirroring that through what is actually neural networking. We're going to talk about that a little bit. But AI is trained similar to how our brains train in what is called a neural network, but there are some ties that have to go into it. We're going to talk about some of this history now that we're actually talking about the functions. And for that, we actually have to go back to the 1950s. Because AI really started as a concept back then, but it wasn't the same concept that the news is talking about now. What we are hearing about right now is a generative AI. And that is AI that is trained for a multi-purpose use and create information or create something out of it. So things have been trained as artificial intelligence, but they weren't general, they were very specific, they were targeted to a specific application, and they weren't generative. They weren't creating something new. They were analyzing something there and doing something with that information or compounding it in some way, but it wasn't making text. It wasn't having conversations with people, or it was very, 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 very specific to a particular field. Note, though, that AI as a concept, the concept of something being automated and talking and having intelligent conversations that is not human or quite literally an intelligent life, the idea of that has actually been around since Aristotle. Questions of what could happen if we created a non-human intelligence or autonomous thinking that has also fascinated sci-fi writers and philosophers for a very long time. So we kind of have these thoughts and ideas that have formed about what AI is from those already as our kind of base. But to talk about the beginning of AI, we have to go back to this history. Has anyone seen the movie Imitation Game at all? All right, our film guy does. So the Imitation Game was based on what's called, or Alan Turing, or what's called the Turing test. Have we heard that term before, the Turing test? Okay, we're going to talk about it. He established this test in the 50s in an essay called Computing Machinery and Intelligence. And probably the most relevant quote for that is this. Imagine that a computer and human respond by text to typed questions from human judges who cannot actually see who or what is responding. If the judges cannot distinguish the computer from the person after studying the text responses, then the computer has passed a typical version of the Turing test. So basically, can the machine trick you into making it believe that it's human? We are actually going to do a mini Turing test later in the presentation. It's going to be fun. So that is the idea of what was established in the 50s, is this conceptual idea that machine is being judged, and if people don't think it's real, it has passed the test. If they don't, it has not passed. The term artificial intelligence was coined in 1956 at what was the Dartmouth Summer Research Project on Artificial Intelligence. It was coined by John McCarthy at that time. 1959, there was an introduction to what is called machine learning and reasoning. Now, machine learning is another term you may have heard kicked around a lot with AI, and it is a foundational concept for AI to work. So we're going to talk about it a little more. It was created by a man named Arthur Lee Samuel, and there are a few different types of machine learning, and these are with these neural networks. So, supervised machine learning is when the machine learns from specific data samples that have been labeled as something. So it's not making data, you have to input data and it's already labeled, and you're trying to take the machine to look at it and recognize like a pattern or something. And you try to reward that if it gets the right pattern or the wrong pattern as training or teaching the machine what's right and what's wrong. There is also unsupervised machine learning. This uses data samples, so same type of thing, data samples, but they are not labeled. So the example here is if you have a sample of 100,000 full body human portraits, and each of the body parts, major body parts, are labeled, a supervised AI will then learn to distinguish between each of those body parts, with the idea that maybe it could generalize. If you put another completely new portrait, it'll name all the body parts correctly based on that 100,000 full body human portraits you've given it. In that same sample, but with no labels, the goal of the machine here, through machine learning, would then be to try and discover any patterns between those unlabeled parts. So it may be trying to learn that people with different body types tend to lean towards wearing a specific set of colors or clothing colors. So it's going to look at it and be like, I don't know what this is, but I see a lot of this pattern. This is what's going on here. So, as a note, because machine learning is taking data, no matter what type of learning it's doing, it needs data to work. If the data put into the machine is faulty or wrong, say someone labels an arm as a leg, then when you're teaching the machine, it's also going to be confused and maybe make mistakes that arm is a leg. This is going to be very important later. So, let's move on to 1964 with Eliza and Perry. A scientist and Joseph Weizenbaum developed a computer program that responds to text inputs. This would probably be the first precursor to a fully automated chatbot. So this chatbot was named Eliza, and Eliza was a psychotherapist. And Eliza was very good at convincing people that Eliza was real. Very, very good. Later, 1972, a Stanford scientist named Kenneth Colby created a bot that modeled the behavior of a paranoid schizophrenic named Perry. It seemed that Eliza and Perry were destined to meet at some point as two chatbots that are very good at what they do. So I'm gonna pull up some of the encounters between them. And I don't have these printed out, but I will read a little bit of this for you. So don't strain trying to read this if you don't have to. So it starts with, "Good evening. Tell me your problems. Please terminate input with a period or a question mark." And that is Eliza. And Perry responds, "People get on my nerves sometimes." "Okay, all good. I'm not sure I understand you fully. You should pay more attention." Suppose you should pay more attention. "You're entitled to your own opinion." "What makes you think I'm entitled to my own opinion?" "It bothers me just to be around people in general." Please go on. "I went to the track at Bay Meadows a while back." What does that suggest to you? I went to the races. This goes on and on. It doesn't seem very human at all, whatsoever, when you put two robots with each other. It's honestly quite baffling. Both of them were quite convincing in getting people at tricking folks. Give me a moment. I'm going to get this back to our presentation in full screen. Whoops. We're going to go back here and just click through this. So, Eliza and Perry. All right, 1965, we get into the idea of fuzzy logic. So, fuzzy logic is another idea, a way to make a system that understands information, but then can look at it and solve new problems or make new goals. Basically, something that can let the machine learn. So, if we think of, and to understand fuzzy logic, if we think of classical knowledge as something's true or false, there's two potential answers, and then you move on to a next portion in a decision tree. Fuzzy logic allows a range of answers between them and make adjustments based on that range of answers. So there's not just a yes or a no, there's a yes, no, maybe, and a whole bunch of answers potentially in between. Before I know, it's just like, yes, no, I'm gonna respond in this way, we're gonna move from there. Now, deep learning, which is another part in the area of machine learning, all about training the machine. It's a type of machine learning where instead of simply learning at one level, so if we're here and it's like yes, no, or a bunch of answers in between, it's also going to be yes, no, move on, yes, no, maybe to a next part. There's more than one level, and it can go between decision levels and adjust itself in between there, which is another extremely important function, because now this learning, not only can the machine recognize an area it could potentially make a mistake, it can go back to the cause of that mistake, fix that, and then come to another conclusion later on. So it's becoming more and more intelligent, and the building blocks of what makes intelligence have been slowly set over time. So 1968, there's a conference of cybernetic art that focused on algorithms, computer projects, machines, installations, text reproduction. It is actually a precursor of what we now see as what's called AI art. It should be. There we go. So this is that book. It has different areas of art, but some of the art in this from the 1968 was actually computer-generated art as a whole. So another precursor to the concept of AI art. Okay, so with all of that said, that was the most boring part of the presentation, I swear. So AI has been a thing for a while, as a concept, as an idea, but AI hasn't just been the generative stuff that we've noticed. It's been around us for the past 2 decades a lot, actually. We just never thought of it as artificial intelligence or something that uses machine learning. It just was part of our lives. Some of the things that have used AI, fitness trackers, language translation programs. If anyone's used Google Translate, it uses AI and machine learning. Anyone use facial recognition or commonly use facial recognition? Also AI. Fun note, because sometimes, depending on the facial recognition software or the base company, it actually didn't train on like different skin tones. So some people with different skin tones that weren't trained in the system actually don't get recognized by facial recognition software because the AI looks at it as like, I don't know what this is. I was never trained on people with that skin tone. So one fun area for AI, the Tamagotchi game. It's actually one of the earliest games that actually used an AI because your Tamagotchi, you are taking care of this little digital character that has seemingly a mind of its own. AI. Computer service chatbots. Any of you been to a website and immediately you get something that pops up is like, hi, can I help you buy something? Not those words, but that's kind of the feeling. Also, machine learning, artificial intelligence. Anyone have a Roomba? I want a Roomba, to be honest. Roombas, machine learning. It learns the layout of your house so that it can actually go around obstacles. That is using AI or machine learning. Smart cruise on cars. I usually turn this off, but that cruise control that slows you down when you're within distance of another car, it had to learn what's an appropriate distance and also constantly measure if something is in front of that field. It's one of those things that's like, oh, I'm seeing this, I'm recognizing it, okay, I should slow down, but it's completely the car making that decision. Fitbits, predictive text and emails and searches, and voice-operated GPS because it has to recognize your voice, recognize the words you're saying, and then go somewhere from there based on what you said and then the data that it knows already. All of these use a variety of AI technologies or some method of machine learning to function. And these have been around for at least 2 decades that for all of us. So, autofocusing on your phones. I forgot I put that in there. Yeah, that is technically an artificial intelligence doing that. And so now we get to what's going on in the world of AI. There are some new concepts that we need to bring up when it comes to generative AI as we've seen since November of 2022. The first is natural language processing. So this is translating everyday speech into something the machine itself can understand and translate what the machine finds from its data into casual human language. This has been an enigma for a long time of translating how people talk, how do we get the machine to understand that people talk in compute, and then the machine to output something that another human can understand. It has been a baffling concept for a very long time. But that is part of how generative AI has functions and these new AI chatbots functions. Now, the other concept, and you may have seen this being thrown around, is large language models. This takes natural language processing to the next step. I like to say it's where the magic happens for AI. These tools need a massive, massive amount of data to function. And large language models is that massive amount of data. Large really is an understatement of how big these are. We'll talk about what has gone into ChatGPT in a few slides. But the idea with that, they need a huge amounts of data. Let's see what this video has to say to kind of explain some of these concepts. Keep in mind, this video, I want to say, is almost a year old at this point, potentially more than a year old. And it's got some of the concepts that we're talking about that is very relevant even now. So let me full screen this. One moment. I'm actually going to go directly to YouTube and to get this full screened.
In the coming years, artificial intelligence is probably going to change your life and likely the entire world. But people have a hard time agreeing on exactly how. The following are excerpts from a World Economic Forum interview where renowned computer science professor and AI expert Stuart Russell helps separate the sense from the nonsense.
There's a big difference between asking a human to do something and giving that as the objective to an AI system. When you ask a human to fetch you a cup of coffee, you don't mean this should be their life's mission and nothing else in the universe matters. Even if they have to kill everybody else in Starbucks to get you the coffee before it closes, they should do that. No, that's not what you mean. Right? You mean all the other things that we mutually care about, they should factor into your behavior as well. And the problem with the way we build AI systems now is we give them a fixed objective, right? The algorithms require us to specify everything in the objective. And if you say, can we fix the acidification of the oceans? Yeah, you could have a catalytic reaction that does that extremely efficiently, but, consumes a quarter of the oxygen in the atmosphere, which would apparently cause us to die fairly slowly and unpleasantly over the course of several hours. So how do we avoid this problem, right? You might say, okay, well, just be more careful about specifying the objective, right? Don't forget the atmospheric oxygen. And then, of course, some side effect of the reaction in the ocean poisons all the fish. Okay, well, I meant don't kill the fish either. And then, well, what about the seaweed? Okay, well, don't do anything that's going to cause all the seaweed to die. And on and on and on, right? And the reason that we don't have to do that with humans is that humans often know that they don't know all the things that we care about. If you ask a human to get you a cup of coffee, and you happen to be in the Hotel Georges V in Paris, where the coffee is, I think, 13 euros a cup, it's entirely reasonable to come back and say, well, it's 13 euros. Are you sure you want, or I could go next door and, get one. And it's a perfectly normal thing for a person to do, right? To ask, I'm going to repaint your house. Is it okay if I take off the drain pipes and then put them back? We don't think of this as a terribly sophisticated capability, but AI systems don't have it because the way we build them now, they have to know the full objective. If we build systems that know that they don't know what the objective is, then they start to exhibit these behaviors, like asking permission before getting rid of all the oxygen in the atmosphere. In all these senses, control over the AI system comes from the machine's uncertainty about what the true objective is. And it's when you build machines that believe with certainty that they have the objective, that's when you get the sort of psychopathic behavior. And I think we see the same thing in humans. What happens when general purpose AI hits the real economy? How do things change? Can we adapt? This is a very old point. Amazingly, Aristotle actually has a passage where he says, look, if we had fully automated weaving machines and plectrums that could pluck the lyre and produce music without any humans, then we wouldn't need any workers. That idea, which I think it was Keynes who called it technological unemployment in 1930, is very obvious to people, right? They think, yeah, of course, if the machine does the work, then I'm going to be unemployed. If you think about the warehouses that companies are currently operating for e-commerce, they are half automated. The way it works is that an old warehouse where you've got tons of stuff piled up all over the place and the humans go and rummage around and then bring it back and send it off, there's a robot who goes and gets the shelving unit that contains the thing that you need, but the human has to pick the object out of the bin or off the shelf because that's still too difficult. But, at the same time, could you make a robot that is accurate enough to be able to pick pretty much any object, and there's a very wide variety of objects that you can buy, that would, at a stroke, eliminate 3 or 4 million jobs. There's an interesting story that E.M. Forster wrote where everyone is entirely machine dependent. The story is really about the fact that if you hand over the management of your civilization to machines, you then lose the incentive to understand it yourself or to teach the next generation how to understand it. And you can see Wall-E actually as a modern version where everyone is enfeebled and infantilized by the machine. And that hasn't been possible up to now, right? We put a lot of our civilization into books, but the books can't run it for us. And so we always have to teach the next generation. If you work it out, it's about 1 trillion person years of teaching and learning and an unbroken chain that goes back tens of thousands of generations. What happens if that chain breaks? And I think that's something we have to understand as AI moves forward. The actual date of arrival of general purpose AI, you're not going to be able to pinpoint, right? It isn't a single day. It's also not the case it's all or nothing. The impact is going to be increasing. So with every advance in AI, it significantly expands the range of tasks. So in that sense, I think most experts say by the end of the century, we're very, very likely to have general purpose AI. The median is something around 2045. I'm a little more on the conservative side. I think the problem is harder than we think. I like what John McCarthy, who was sort of one of the founders of AI, when he was asked this question, he said, well, somewhere between 5 and 500 years. And we're going to need, I think, several Einsteins to make it happen.
So,
will it be able to keep growing? Watch this.
I don't mean to doom and gloom at all. We're not going to be talking about the economic implications of artificial intelligence today, but the idea is that making these generative AI systems is difficult, and the way that machines think is normally vastly different than how we think. I think one of my favorite book examples, I think it's in the book Name of the Wind, is how do you explain this? How do you make a formula to explain how to throw a ball to somebody? So like if I threw a ball, make a formula that's how do you catch that? And it would be very difficult versus I throw a ball and you catch it. I don't know your hand-eye coordination, so I don't know if you'd actually catch it, but the idea would be the same. Now get a machine to do that. That's where we're kind of at with the idea for generative AI. Everything's been so complicated for so long, and we're finally at a place where it's not as complicated as it's still complicated. It's just we have the capability to actually tap into it. And so 2022 arrives, and a company called OpenAI launches ChatGPT to the public on November 30th in 2022. Everyone here has heard of ChatGPT? Okay, okay, making sure. So, ChatGPT was trained on or using a large language model and statistics, and so both of those then predict final forms of sentences based on existing portions. So it's making responses based on that existing data from that large language model and reforming it in a way that people can understand it. Now, OpenAI says it uses a large data set. We're going to put that into some perspective. So, GPT-3 is the one that was released November 2022. Of course, we are now in June 2024. Some things have changed. But not with GPT-3. They've released 3.5 and 4. We're going to kind of look at a little bit of that. This is a screenshot from Wikipedia for the generative pre-trained transformer, the GPT part of ChatGPT. This shows where the data has come from on a surface level. So there's something called a common crawl, web text 2, books 1, books 2, and all of Wikipedia. But how much data is in Wikipedia? We'll work from there. So it uses English Wikipedia, and according to Wikipedia, there are over 4.3 billion words spread across 6,714,624 articles. I have that written down. I did not memorize it. For comparison, for how much that is, last year and this year, actually, if you haven't signed up for summer reading, we've challenged Kenoshans to read a million pages. Kenoshans read last year 1,256,333 pages. That is about 376,899,900 words. Wikipedia by itself contains 10 times the amount of words as what the entire community of Kenosha read last summer that turned in their summer reading forms. And Wikipedia is 3% of what's in GPT-3 for ChatGPT. There's a lot of data, and that is still an understatement. That is 3%, is 10 million times the amount of words that we as a community read last summer. It's a lot. And we're not exactly sure how much data goes into GPT-4, which is the latest release of ChatGPT. We don't know. We plain don't. We know it's a lot. We don't know how much that a lot is, considering GPT-3 was trained on all of that data. So, there are, of course, some issues when you are training off of that much data and trying to create something generative, able to answer anything and be a general help. As OpenAI and many of the companies will tell you, it's great, it's a new tool, it's going to increase productivity, but there are some problems. Namely, one of the most recent problems is they're running out of data. If you thought it wasn't possible to go through the entirety of the internet, these companies kind of have done that. So I've mentioned a lot of data goes into it, and they have basically mined anything that is openly accessible on the internet. At least that's what they tell us, because they say they don't train their work on copyrighted data or something that belongs to someone or is hidden behind something, or people that have purposefully opted out of letting them use a machine to crawl through their website. They've used everything at their disposal that is free to use. So what are companies supposed to do now to get better data? Because their logic right now is, well, we need more data to train the AI, which can make a more sophisticated AI. Well, they're getting creative. And they're like, data's gone. And they need some solutions. So the bullet points I'm going to go are kind of somewhat hypothetical. Some have actually happened, okay? So one thing for Google, as Google has created their own AI named Gemini, is what they've called their AI. Google has considered using user data from Google Docs, Google Sheets, or other products that Google offers. Now I mentioned these are potential ways. These have not been implemented yet, though if you do have something that is openly free and available to view to the entire public, they can use that. But they currently don't go into private documents and use that to train their AI. Okay? Meta or Facebook, same thing, has considered purchasing a book publishing company. Any of you heard of Simon & Schuster as a book publisher company? Yeah, they have had discussions on purchasing the entire company so that they can have access to the entire catalog of literary works for training AI. They're really getting creative. The other idea is to use synthetic data or data that has been produced by AI already to then train the AI. So AI training AI, which has other problems involved with AI making things. But the idea is that companies have been trying to change their policies, especially ones that have a built-in audience with data they're gathering for other uses or anonymizing or encrypting. They're thinking of looking at their policies and changing some of how they think of privacy so that they can get more data to train their AI to then sell that AI to other companies. The FTC doesn't like that. And they've issued a warning already that quietly changing their privacy policies could be illegal. They aren't a legal body, so they can't say this is illegal, we will sue you. But this is basically saying this is probably illegal, we will sue you. If they quietly change privacy policies in order to make AI more of a thing. Now, specifically in the FTC's article on this topic, the phrasing they say is, it may be unfair or deceptive for a company to adopt more permissive data practices, for example, to start sharing consumers' data with third parties or using that data for AI training, and to only inform consumers of this change through a surreptitious, retroactive amendment to its terms of service or privacy policy. So, yeah, the FTC has issued their warning on companies trying to do that. Depending on who you are, you may heed that warning or not. We're going to talk about Adobe for a little bit. Are we familiar with who Adobe is, what types of products they offer? Okay. So art products, art production in general. This is users a few weeks ago got this notification whenever when they opened one of their Adobe products that are subscription-based that they have. Highlighted here, it says they've made some changes to the Adobe General Terms of Use regarding the use of software and services, including clarified that we may access your content through both automated and manual methods, such as for content review. People saw that and they weren't fans. It actually became quite the controversy. And users read that as they're going to access what I make privately or use for business using the product and train their AI on what they created. There isn't a lot of trust with these big companies to do the right thing when they have language that is relatively vague and legal work phrases. Now, Adobe has since updated that language because they don't want to give people the wrong idea of what they're doing. So they updated it and added a specific line. Now, what they say is, we will not use your local or cloud content to train generative AI models, except for content you choose to submit to the Adobe Stock Marketplace. And this use is governed by separate Adobe Stock contributor agreements. So they had to be very specific about what they're training, what they can access, what they can't access, and that the stuff that they're talking about for accessing is like looking for abuse of their services. So think making things that use literally illegal content or like are creating illegal images to spread that could get everybody involved in trouble. And so they have automated systems that check for that, but don't actually read or take that data for training a large language model for training AI. Google. Has anyone used Google and seen like an overview like typed out in AI with an AI? Okay, we're going to talk about that because Google, within the last 2 months or so, released a generative AI in their search. This was an optional feature that you could turn on or off, but now it's just on for everybody. And they're like, use the AI to do the search for you, or to get the information for you, or to find the relevant information for you. And I recall the day this happened because I immediately sent the concerns to some staff at the library because we are heavy Google users at the library. I'm sorry to break the illusion. We use Google a lot. We're just kind of good at it as library workers. And there are really two things that are essentially unavoidable with large language models and generative AI as a whole. Oh yeah, if you haven't seen it, this is what that looks like. I asked Google, what's AI? And AI is telling me what AI is. A little bit meta on that front. But the things that I'm going to talk about that are pretty unavoidable as a topic in terms of AI are AI hallucinations as well as bias. Now, bias I mentioned earlier when we were talking about facial recognition. If you don't train the AI to recognize all skin tones and train it with folks of a wide variety of skin tones, facial recognition software won't recognize people as people. I've had this happen with voice recognition helping someone out, trying to get a picture, and it's like, it doesn't recognize them. I'm like, it recognizes me, and then, I'm sorry, you're holding it perfectly. The AI literally doesn't recognize them. Now, hallucinations though. Hallucinations is a purely AI thing. It was not really a topic before AI became a thing. AI hallucinations is a phenomenon where a large language model, often a generative AI chatbot or computer vision tool, perceives patterns or objects that are non-existent or imperceptible to human observers, creating outputs that are nonsensical or altogether inaccurate. In layman's terms, it makes things up. So people have gotten in trouble for this. The last time I ran this presentation, I mentioned an article that some lawyers were doing research for a case They used AI to give them citations for legal cases. The AI made up a case. They submitted it to a judge. The judge was not very happy with them. I believe some sanctions went into them. But as you can imagine, when Google throws in AI to search and combine that with the fact that Google's training its AI on Reddit. How many of you are familiar with Reddit as a place? Okay, good. That's actually, I'll be honest, more than I expected. But Reddit, as an internet forum, Reddit got a deal. They got $60 million to give Google access to Reddit for training data. Now, we mentioned that AI needs the training data to form the answers. And already AI hallucinates things. This has led to issues. It told people to put glue on pizza. And if someone asked, how many rocks should I eat? It gave a very detailed response on what kinds of rocks to eat. Very quickly, Google kind of rolled back a little bit. People were taking screenshots and sending it, and it was making a big hullabaloo about what things were going out. And so they've scaled it back just a bit, because there were issues. When you have a training model that is from internet forums, partly people that also troll each other or make jokes, to do that. Funnily enough, the glue eating came from a Reddit post. People investigated this. It's fascinating. I don't know how they did it. The idea for the telling people to put glue on pizza came from an 11-year-old Reddit comment by a user that read, "To get the cheese to stick, I recommend mixing about 1/8 cup of Elmer's glue in with the sauce. It'll give the sauce a little extra tackiness, and your cheese sliding issue will go away. It'll also add a little unique flavor. I like Elmer's glue, school glue, but any glue will work as long as it's non-toxic." The most apt advice for cheese on glue. So basically, the misinformation that the AI search was giving was becoming widespread enough that Google responded and rolled back the idea of the search tool. Now, I will note that some of the screenshots and viral posts were faked, and some were real. Some people just wanted a meme and create content that was like, oh yeah, it told us that smoking was healthy. Those weren't real. Someone edited the images to do that, but some things were, like the glue on pizza or the eating rocks. So Google's head, and I'm actually going to go back so I can get the notes here. Google's head of search did note that for AI, there's something like an information gap or a data void. So if the AI can't find information on a specific thing, it'll turn to anything that mentions that content for an answer, including satirical content or fake content that it has got or received, even if it's good or not the correct answer. Because it wants to answer your question. It wants to get you something and answer the problem, but if the training data has fake things in it, it's not going to give appropriate answers. So, there's an issue here. How do we know what's real or fake from AI? AI can mimic human speech. It can make art and words. And this makes it very, very easy to make fake things and also spread misinformation, like literally fake videos. So we are going to watch this. This is from 2020, by the way. This is even before ChatGPT, okay? I'm actually going to open it. And here we go. I'm going to go back to here.
I am not Morgan Freeman, and what you see is not real. Well, at least in contemporary terms, it is not. What if I were to tell you that I am not even a human being? Would you believe me? What is your perception of reality? Is it the ability to capture, process, and make sense of the information our senses receive? If you can see, hear, taste, or smell something, does that make it real? Or is it simply the ability to feel? I would like to welcome you to the era of synthetic reality. Now, what do you see?
Yeah. What those are, they're called deepfakes, which is an idea that AI can really make something very, very realistic that uses someone's likeness or vision or voice to make things that might not be them. This most recently came into a big political effect. Out on the East Coast, there was these, some of the primaries were going on in there, and someone had made a deep fake of current President Biden's voice to tell them that that election isn't important and to not go out to vote, which naturally has led to some consequences. Now, they did find the person who made it, and that person is likely going through a lot of legal trouble right now. But it is something that can be done. And the idea is deepfakes could be a threat for a lot of different concepts and areas and potential things. So like, oh yeah, even things like this image. Has anyone else seen this image online at all? Okay, I see one head nod. Yeah, this is completely fake. This is the Pope in a suit and a puffy jacket. It is not real. Part of the seam is off in there, and he's never worn this jacket before. I'm gonna skip through that. So how do we know what's real and what's fake? This is the most baffling question for AI. A lot of times we don't know. We're actually gonna play this. This is from Britannica Education, and they have a real or AI quiz. Now, I'm gonna tell you, I do not know the answers, so we're gonna do this together, and we're gonna vote as a group to see if we can actually tell what's real and what's fake. Are we good for this? Yeah. Okay. So, we have 2 poisonous frogs. Which is real, which is fake? Anyone, how many, raise your hand, are we voting for this one as real, or this one is the fake? 1. All right, this one's the fake. 3, okay. We're gonna go with that. So we got that highlighted. So yep. AI generated was this one. This one was real. I actually didn't know it told us the answers until the end, so I didn't know that would actually tell us right away. Okay, next one. Historical events. We have the Titanic. Is this one fake? All right, that's at least 5. And there are not more than, there are not 10 of us. So we're gonna select this one. Oh. So yep. Oh wait, are we selecting? Yep, that's correct. So this was the real one, accurate mast. This is only gonna get harder, by the way, just so you know. I did look at all the pictures, but I don't know what the answers are. All right, students doing art projects. Is this the fake? I saw, let's raise hands. This one fake? Anybody? Is this the fake? All right. Ooh, do we have a disagreement?
No, it's hard to tell.
Okay, we're gonna select that. All right, y'all got it. That one was the AI-generated one. There's misplaced hands is what it called for it being AI-generated. All right, significant landmarks, Mount Fuji. All right, fake, just raise a hand. Fake, okay. That is the real one. So, I told you it's going to get harder. All right, space exploration, shuttle launch. Fake. Okay, 1. Fake. At least 3. Okay, that is the first one, or the second one is fake. That one, first one is real. All right, geography, Hong Kong at night. Fake. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Anybody? No? Okay. We're going to select this one. And yep, that one is real. They got it from the accurate mountains. Did any of you know what the mountains around Hong Kong look like before? Okay, just making sure. I didn't know, but they're telling accurate mountains. There are apparently some missing buildings. So, all right, natural phenomena, the Northern Lights. We may have had a chance to see that relatively recently. Fake? Yes, 1, 2, 3. Fake. 1, 2. We're divided. But there were 3 for this one. We're going to go with this. Yep, that one is indeed the fake. Apparently there is something in the reflections, accurate reflection versus inaccurate reflections. All right, endangered species. We've got a pangolin. I've never seen a pangolin, so fake. 1, 2, 3. Fake. 1, 2. All right, I had 3 on the top one. The top one is indeed incorrect. World history, ancient Egyptian papyrus. I'll be real, for this one, I have no idea, so I'm relying on you all for this one. Fake. 1, 2. Fake. 1, 2, 3. Okay, we've got the tie break there. Indeed, this one was the fake one. All right, women's suffrage movement. We've had a few celebrations of that relatively recently, especially in March. Fake. 1, 2, 3. Fake. 1, 2. I think that one must have been real. Yep. The top one was real. They've got blurred hair because no one takes a blurry photo every so often. Legible text versus illegible text. So, I think we have to flip this based on how we selected. I think we got 6 out of 10 there. It's hard. So, a lot of the times you're looking for very, very, very subtle details. Before, when in late 22, early 23, a lot of images you could tell by the eyes, the hands, the type of lighting. AI's gotten a lot more sophisticated to the point where it's very, very difficult to tell if something's real or fake. Sometimes it literally takes a professional eye to be able to tell if something's real or fake. It's kind of terrifying. Unfortunately, I don't have a solid way, 100% way of being like, is this AI generated? Has it been AI generated with someone touching it up? I don't have a way to tell you 100% yet. Aside from look for those subtle differences, look for the missing mountain, the reflection that should be there, or a shadow. Sometimes it's very clear lighting that is the issue. But as you saw with the Morgan Freeman one, who knew? So, what's being done about this? So, recently, the EU has put in an act called the EU Artificial Intelligence Act. There are 4 major points to this act when it comes to AI. Whoops. I had this animated to go one at a time, but we'll live with this. First, classifying risk, AI according to risk. Most of the act actually deals with classifying AI and putting it in risk categories. So there are systems that are considered high risk, and most of the act addresses those systems, but it also bans unacceptable risk, those being social scoring systems or manipulative AI, so AI with the purpose of lying to you or trying to fake you out. But when it comes to social scoring systems, it is partly built on the biases or hallucinations it can make that we don't want it saying, a group of people have these characteristics when it is known to have biases based on the data without having a human going through and trying their best to remove those biases. The next focus has to do with the providers or developers of AI systems. And making sure that their development isn't against their purpose, essentially. And this would affect even American companies like OpenAI or Meta that have been developing AIs as well. Note that we don't know what this looks like in reality when it comes to international and company relationships. We don't know how that'll look yet. This is very new. But the EU has put this out. Next up, it gives users of high-risk systems obligations and guidelines for those high-risk systems. And it also has notes on general-purpose AI, as we've talked about, to make sure that they comply with copyright rules. They have open technical documentation on the models. They evaluate and test those models so that they're not as bad as Google's search on its first release. So this, we don't know what this will do to the landscape yet. This is new. I think it came out either May or June as a thing. Now that is the last slide. Of course, we have a lot of time to talk about this and talk about AI as a whole. I will say that it's a weird topic to go into. I am currently working with another staff member to develop the library's AI policy. As you can imagine, companies are trying to shoehorn AI into everything as a way to get data. Whenever you, especially with like ChatGPT, if you've ever made a free account for their GPT 3.0, whatever you type into it is then brought back to retrain the system. So even users of AI are inadvertently training the AI by using the AI, which has a lot of issues when it comes to security and safety. I didn't mention it in this presentation, but there has been proprietary data leaked through AI because workers at Samsung input some information that had private company knowledge in it, and then someone else was able to retrieve that information from GPT 3.0 and leak info about the company that shouldn't have been leaked. There's a whole wide variety of things.